My wife's mentally ill sister tried to break us up by claiming my wife was cheating. We thought she was just lashing out, but it turned out she was telling the truth. Despite everything, my wife and I got a restraining order against her and chose to rebuild our relationship from the ground up. I was at a family barbecue when my son abruptly inquired about my man juice. The day began like any other. We were enjoying dinner with my in-laws, engaging in pleasant conversation and grilling steaks. It felt like the idyllic suburban life I had always envisioned. My son and I were by ourselves, roasting marshmallows in the living room, discussing whatever topic 7-year-olds typically delve into. Out of the blue, he asked me what a donor was. I was taken aback and questioned if he had encountered that term at school. He shook his head, explaining that Aunt Ashley, my wife's sister, had used it when speaking to my wife. When he pressed for its meaning, she told him he would understand when he was older, an explanation that never satisfied my son, Mikey. Given my fairly strict policy against dishonesty, I shared a diluted version of the truth. "Oh," he exclaimed, nodding vigorously. I smiled at his innocent curiosity, but then he revealed something that would jeopardize my marriage and alter my life indefinitely. "Daddy, are you upset with me? Mommy told me I'm not allowed to ask you questions anymore," he uttered in such a shy, hesitant tone that it broke my heart. But just before I could ask why he felt that way, his mother entered and kissed me. It melted me as it always did, and in that moment, I completely forgot our conversation. My son dashed outside, and my beautiful wife expressed her gratitude for our life together. She reminded me that this was the existence we had always dreamed of since our college dating days. I smiled, and we recalled our initial date, how diligently I had tried to impress her, how I had feigned enjoyment of every song she played, and how she had added them to a playlist she played incessantly until I finally confessed 3 years later. We kissed, and it still felt as electrifying as our first encounter. We went outside and played with our son before returning home and preparing for bed. However, as I lay there with my arms around her, I couldn't shake a persistent unease. My wife typically encouraged our son to ask questions. We had long ago decided not to curtail his childhood, unlike our own. None of the pieces seemed to fit. I realized my only recourse was to directly confront my son. So, the following day, while my wife was at her Pilates class, that's precisely what I did. After many hesitations and uncertainties, Mikey finally divulged the information, or at least a version of it. He told me that Ashley and my wife had been jesting about how excellent a donor Robert was. My stomach churned. I forced a wide, artificial smile and told him it was merely an adult phrase used among friends, and he could use it too when he was older. I felt beads of perspiration on my forehead, but he simply shrugged and returned to playing with his toy cars. You see, Rob was my wife's first boyfriend in high school. He was the only man she had dated before me, and he resided in Australia while we lived in California. I panicked and immediately ordered a paternity test. The days awaiting the laboratory results were agonizing. Things simply didn't align. By that point, Rob had been out of the picture for over a decade. It seemed impossible, right? And secondly, our son bore a striking resemblance to me. He literally had my exact hazel green eye color and nose bridge. Or so I believed, because after 2 weeks, the results arrived. He wasn't biologically mine. Yet, when my wife offered her explanation, I wasn't even angry. In fact, I felt even more content, knowing we could preserve our family and continue to raise Mikey. When Sarah returned home that evening, I was seated at the kitchen table with the printed test results. She glanced at my face and immediately sensed something was profoundly wrong. "We need to talk," I stated. Her gaze shifted to the papers, then back to me. "What's that?" "Mikey isn't mine." My voice sounded unfamiliar even to myself. "Is he Robert's?" The color drained from her face. She sank heavily into the chair opposite me. For a prolonged moment, she remained silent, then nodded. "I need you to explain," I urged, "and don't conceal anything from me." She drew a deep breath. "It's not what you imagine. Robert wasn't involved when I became pregnant. I never betrayed you. I simply watched her, waiting. Remember when we first began trying for a baby, and nothing happened?" She reached for my hand, but I withdrew. "We visited that fertility specialist, Dr. Quinn." I nodded stiffly. "We tried for almost 2 years before Mikey arrived. They conducted all those tests on both of us," she continued, "and they discovered issues with your sperm count. Remember, they said our chances were very low." I did remember. I had been devastated. "What you don't know is that I went back alone. I inquired about other options. Dr. Quinn mentioned sperm donors." My mind reeled. "You used a donor without informing me?" She was weeping now. "I was desperate for a baby, for our baby. I knew how much you yearned to be a father, and I thought if I used someone who resembled you. So you chose your ex-boyfriend?" My voice involuntarily rose. "No, heavens no. It was completely anonymous. I never knew who the donor was. I gestured to the papers, then recounted what Mikey had overheard about Robert being a good donor. Sarah wiped her eyes. That was about Robert Miller, Ashley's coworker. He donated bone marrow to his niece. We were discussing his bravery. The explanation struck me like a physical blow. It made perfect sense. Ashley worked at a pediatric hospital. They had been having an ordinary conversation, and my paranoid mind had leapt to the worst conclusion. But Mikey said Ashley told him not to ask me questions. I pressed, still needing full clarity. Sarah appeared bewildered. I would never tell him that. Never. That makes no sense. You know how crucial open communication is to both of us. We conversed for hours that night. We wept. We argued. But ultimately, I grasped an important truth. Mikey was my son, biology be damned. I had raised him. I adored him. Nothing could alter that. Sarah and I still had much to resolve. The deception had fractured our trust. But when I considered our family, the one we had built together, I knew it was worth struggling for. The decision to forgive Sarah was the most challenging I had ever faced. But seeing Mikey's face illuminate when I returned home from work that evening, shouting, "Daddy," and launching himself into my embrace, how could I abandon that? I assured Sarah we would navigate this together, but complete candor was essential moving forward. For a few weeks, things seemed stable. We began seeing a marriage counselor, Dr. Jennifer, who specialized in family secrets and rebuilding confidence. Her office was inviting, with comfortable seating and soft lighting that somehow made difficult discussions feel less intimidating. Sarah patiently addressed all my inquiries about the donor process. I learned she had selected someone with my physical traits, height, eye color, even my blood type. She had considered everything except informing me of the truth. I just wanted us to have our family. She kept repeating, tears streaming down her face. I was afraid you'd leave if I told you we needed a donor. Honestly, that hurt more than the lie itself. Did she truly believe I was that superficial? But Dr. Jennifer helped me comprehend that Sarah's apprehension stemmed from her own father abandoning her mother when circumstances grew difficult. Old wounds sometimes compel us to act irrationally. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, we returned home exhausted but feeling more connected. The session had focused on vulnerability and how the fear of rejection often leads to destructive behaviors. Dr. Jennifer had skillfully guided us through some challenging conversations. Sarah drifted off to sleep on my chest while we watched television. I gently brushed her hair from her face, contemplating that perhaps we would indeed overcome this. Then her phone vibrated on the coffee table. I shouldn't have looked. We were striving to restore trust, and here I was, immediately undermining it. But after everything, my curiosity prevailed. The notification displayed a text from Ashley. Did he believe the Robert Miller story? My blood ran cold. I carefully slipped out from under Sarah, retrieved her phone, and took it to the bathroom. I hesitated for a full minute before opening the message. The passcode was Mikey's birthday, as always. Inside was an entire conversation that confirmed my gravest fears. Ashley, did he believe the Robert Miller story? Sarah, hook, line, and sinker. He's such a good guy. Ashley, thank God. Rob would panic if he knew someone was asking questions. Sarah, I know, but we're fine now. Crisis averted. I scrolled up to view more, but the conversation had been deleted prior to that point. I returned the phone precisely where it had been and went to our guest bedroom. I couldn't sleep beside her that night. The ceiling fan rotated languidly above me as I gazed upward, my mind racing with unanswerable questions. The next morning, I called in sick to work and waited for Sarah to depart for her dental appointment. Through the kitchen window, I watched her car exit the driveway and vanish down the street. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I began searching through everything, her email, her dresser drawers, even the storage boxes in our attic. I didn't know what I was seeking until I discovered it, tucked inside an old college textbook. A stack of actual handwritten letters, all from Robert. They weren't recent. Most were from around the time Sarah became pregnant with Mikey. But they made it unequivocally clear. Robert hadn't simply been a sperm donor. He had been very much involved. I miss your body pressed against mine. One letter read. Sydney is beautiful but empty without you. I can't wait for you to visit again. Another mentioned. Our weekend in San Diego was perfect. I keep thinking about starting a life together. The most unsettling one. I know it's complicated with him, but this baby changes everything. We need to discuss our future. I felt as though I had been punched in the gut. San Diego? When had she gone to San Diego? Then it dawned on me. Her girls' weekend with Ashley about 8 years ago, right around the time she would have conceived Mikey. I photographed all the letters with my phone, then replaced everything exactly as I had found it. When Sarah came home that night, I acted normally, or as normally as possible when your entire existence feels like it's collapsing. That night, I messaged Ashley from my phone. We need to talk alone. It's important. She replied immediately. Everything okay? Sarah's phone died, and she's in the bath. Just brother-in-law stuff. Meet for coffee tomorrow. That place near your work at 10 o'clock. Sure thing. The next morning, I sat waiting at the coffee shop, rehearsing my words. The cafe buzzed with the morning crowd, the air thick with the rich scent of freshly ground coffee beans and a soft murmur of conversations. Ashley entered, appearing completely at ease, ordered her usual complex latte, then slid into the booth across from me. So, what's up? She inquired, stirring her coffee. You're being cryptic. I placed my phone on the table, screen up, displaying one of Robert's letters. I know about Robert. The real Robert. The color drained from her face. Where did you get that? Doesn't matter. What matters is you and Sarah have been deceiving me for years. Ashley's eyes darted around the cafe, as if seeking an escape route. Finally, she sighed. It's not what you imagine. Then explain it to me, because right now I'm thinking my wife cheated on me with her ex, became pregnant, and passed his child off as mine for 7 years. Ashley leaned forward. You weren't meant to discover this way. I wasn't meant to discover it at all. I retorted, my voice sharper than intended. Look, Sarah loves you. She has always loved you. The situation with Robert, it was a mistake. One weekend of foolishness. I laughed bitterly. A weekend that resulted in my son. Your son, Ashley emphasized. You're his dad. You've always been his dad. Stop with the sentimentality and tell me what occurred. Ashley took a deep breath. We went to San Diego that weekend, remember? Sarah was heartbroken about the fertility issues. You two had been trying for so long. She was in a very vulnerable state, so she contacted her ex-boyfriend. I couldn't suppress the bitterness in my voice. No, it was a coincidence. We ran into him at this bar. He was in California for work. One thing led to another. She trailed off, visibly uncomfortable. And Sarah slept with him. I finished flatly. Ashley nodded. She was intoxicated and emotional. She regretted it instantly. Then, when she found out she was pregnant, she panicked, so she fabricated the entire sperm donor story. Why not just tell me the truth? Ashley looked at me as if I were foolish. Because she knew it would ruin your marriage. She made a terrible error, but she loves you. She wanted your family together. Our family, built on lies. I rose, tossing some cash onto the table. Tell Sarah I know everything, and tell her not to be home when I return from work. I need time to process. Ashley grasped my arm. Please don't discard 7 years over one mistake. I pulled my arm away. The mistake wasn't the issue. The 7 years of deception were. I drove aimlessly for hours afterward. The world outside my car window appeared distant and unreal, as if I were observing someone else's life unfold. Eventually, I ended up at my friend Joseph's place. He allowed me to stay on his couch without asking too many questions. When morning arrived, I had 37 missed calls and texts from Sarah. I finally replied, I know about San Diego. I know Robert is Mikey's biological father. I need space. Her immediate response was, please come home. Let me explain. Don't abandon our family. That word, family, resonated deeply with me, because despite everything, we were still a family, and Mikey had to be considered. I couldn't simply vanish from his life because of Sarah's betrayal. I returned home that evening to find Sarah seated on our porch steps, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She stood when my car pulled in, but did not approach. Where's Mikey? I inquired, maintaining my distance. With my parents. I thought we needed to speak privately. I nodded and followed her inside. Our house felt peculiar, as if I were visiting someone else's dwelling. Family photographs on every wall seemed to mock me. Was anything genuine? We sat on opposite ends of the couch. Sarah produced a folder and placed it on the coffee table between us. Before you say anything, I need you to see these. She stated. Inside were medical documents from 8 years ago, fertility test results, doctor's notes, and a signed agreement from a sperm bank. I didn't lie about using a donor, she said softly. I did go to the clinic. I did choose someone with your characteristics. I did get inseminated there. I stared at the papers, bewildered. But Robert happened 2 weeks before the procedure. Her voice cracked. It was one terrible night, not a weekend. Ashley lied to protect me. I was at rock bottom about our fertility issues. I encountered Robert by chance at a bar when I was alone in San Diego. I got drunk. I made the worst mistake of my life. I struggled to assimilate this new information. Then why all the letters? Why was he discussing the baby? Sarah looked perplexed. What letters? I showed her the pictures on my phone. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. These aren't real, she stated firmly. I haven't received letters from Robert ever, and he definitely never knew about the pregnancy. They were in your college textbook in the attic. She shook her head. I donated all my college books years ago. This makes no sense. Now I was utterly confused. If the letters were fabricated, who placed them there and why? Sarah's expression suddenly shifted as realization dawned. Ashley, check the postmarks. I zoomed in on the photos. There were no postmarks on the envelopes, no stamps either. Why would Ashley do this? I asked. Sarah looked ill. I think she wanted us to break up. That's preposterous. She's your sister. Who's been in love with you since college? I nearly choked. What? No way. She told me once, drunk at her bachelorette party, that she'd met you first at that frat party, but you only had eyes for me. I thought she was over it, especially after she married William. Things began to fall into place. Ashley's divorce last year, her sudden increase in time spent at our house, the looks I had dismissed as mere friendly affection. I need to know the truth, Sarah. The absolute truth. Is there any possibility Robert is Mikey's father? Sarah took my hands. I had the procedure 2 weeks after the incident. Dr. Quinn said the timing made it virtually impossible for Robert to be the father. But if you want DNA confirmation, I understand. I considered the paternity test I had already taken. It had proven I wasn't Mikey's biological father, but it hadn't proven Robert was. Given what I now understood about Ashley's manipulation, it seemed probable that Mikey was the donor's child, not Robert's. The test had only confirmed what Sarah had already admitted, that I was not the biological father. Why did Ashley tell Mikey not to ask me questions? I inquired, still needing to grasp everything. She's been trying to drive us apart, Sarah said, her voice cracking. My own sister. We spent the night discussing everything. Sarah showed me messages between her and the actual Robert from years ago. Nothing romantic, just occasional friendly exchanges that ceased entirely after she became pregnant. She even offered to contact him for a paternity test. I decided that wasn't necessary. Whether the donor was Robert or anonymous donor number 4578, the outcome was the same. Mikey wasn't biologically mine, but he was still my son. The next day, we invited Ashley over. She entered buoyantly, as if nothing were amiss, gave me a lingering embrace that now felt unsettling, and sat down expecting our customary family dinner. Where's my favorite nephew? She asked, looking around. Still at my parents', Sarah replied coolly. We wanted to speak with you alone. Ashley's smile faltered. About what? I placed the letters on the table. About these. About why you planted fake letters in our attic. About why you told Mikey not to ask me questions. Her face cycled through a series of expressions. Shock, denial, anger, and finally, resignation. You don't deserve her, Ashley whispered, glaring at me. You never did. Sarah stood up. Ashley, what did you do? Ashley laughed bitterly. What did I do? I tried to open your eyes. He's not even Mikey's real father. I know, I stated calmly. I've known for weeks. That stunned her. You know, Sarah told me everything about the fertility issues, about the donor, everything. Ashley's eyes darted between us. But the letters are obvious fakes, Sarah concluded. Robert didn't even know I was pregnant, and I certainly wasn't visiting him in Sydney while carrying another man's child. Ashley's face crumpled. I just wanted you. Me? I asked, disgusted. Were you truly willing to ruin your sister's marriage, your nephew's family? Tears streamed down Ashley's face. You don't understand. I've loved you since that first night at the Kappa house, but you never even noticed me. It was always Sarah. Sarah moved to sit beside me, taking my hand. Ashley, you need help. Professional help. This is not normal behavior. What's not normal is pretending to be one big happy family when everything is built on lies. Ashley shouted. I had had enough. The only person lying here is you. You manipulated my son. You tried to destroy my marriage. You need to leave now. Ashley stood, suddenly composed. This isn't over. He deserves to know the truth. Sarah stiffened beside me. What are you talking about? Mikey. He deserves to know his real daddy isn't his daddy at all. I felt Sarah trembling beside me. I squeezed her hand reassuringly. If you go anywhere near my son with this, I will obtain a restraining order, I stated evenly. And I will ensure everyone in the family knows exactly what you attempted to do. Ashley stared at us for a prolonged moment, then grabbed her purse. You'll regret this, both of you. After she departed, Sarah collapsed against me, sobbing. I can't believe she would do this. My own sister. The next few days were tense. We collected Mikey from his grandparents' house, attempting to act normally while constantly checking our phones for messages from Ashley. We had agreed not to inform the rest of the family yet, hoping Ashley would seek help independently. Then came the text from Nancy. Is it true? Ashley says you've been lying about Mikey's father. Sarah immediately called her mom. Mom, Ashley is experiencing some issues. Whatever she told you isn't true. I could hear Nancy's voice through the phone, high-pitched and distressed. She showed us letters, Sarah? Letters from Robert talking about being the baby's father. Those letters are fake, Mom. Ashley wrote them. Nancy fell silent for a moment. That doesn't make sense. Why would she do that? Sarah looked at me, then at the ground. Because she's in love with my husband and wants to break us up. There was a long silence on the other end. Your father and I are coming over now. An hour later, we were seated in our living room with Dave and Nancy, explaining everything. The fertility issues, the donor, Ashley's deception. I omitted the detail about Sarah's one-night mistake. Some things parents don't need to know. Dave looked grim. I've noticed Ashley acting strangely since her divorce, but this is beyond concerning. Nancy was weeping quietly. We should have seen it. She's always been so competitive with you, Sarah. What should we do? Sarah asked. I'm worried about what she might tell Mikey. Dave straightened up. Your mother and I will manage Ashley. You two focus on safeguarding Mikey. The next day, Dave called to inform us that Ashley had consented to see a therapist. Apparently, she had broken down when confronted by both parents.
Confessing everything. The fake letters manipulating Mikey, her obsession with me. I thought that would be the resolution. We could begin to heal and rebuild our family. Then I picked up Mikey from school. As soon as he entered the car, I knew something was amiss. His usual chatter was absent. He gazed out the window silently. Everything okay, buddy? I inquired. He looked at me with those large hazel green eyes. Aunt Ashley came to see me at recess. My heart stopped. What did she say? His lower lip trembled. She said you're not my real dad, that my real dad lives in Australia. Is that true? I pulled the car over, my hands shaking too much to drive. I turned to face him, trying to find the appropriate words. Mikey, I am your real dad. I've been your dad since the day you were born. I tried to keep my voice steady. But there's something called biology, which is about how babies are conceived, and in that way, someone else helped create you. His forehead furrowed in concentration. Like a donor? The man juice thing. Despite everything, I had to smile. Yes, buddy, exactly like that. Mom and I wanted you so desperately, but my man juice couldn't make babies, so we sought assistance from the Australia man. No, from a doctor and a donor. The Australia man is just someone Mom knew a long time ago. Aunt Ashley is confused about some things right now. Mikey pondered for a moment. So you're still my dad, just not my bio dad? I'm your dad in all the ways that matter. I love you more than anything in the world. He unbuckled his seatbelt and propelled himself across the center console to embrace me. I love you too, Dad. That night, after Mikey was asleep, Sarah and I made a decision. We filed for a temporary restraining order against Ashley. We consulted with a lawyer about formal adoption proceedings so I could legally adopt Mikey, even though I was already listed on his birth certificate. We even discussed relocating perhaps to Northern California to gain some distance. But most importantly, we resolved that our family was worth fighting for. The foundation might have been built on a complex truth, but the affection was genuine. Mikey was my son, Sarah was my wife, and nothing, not Ashley's schemes, not biology, not even the challenges yet to come could alter that. As we move forward, I acknowledge there will be difficult days. The restraining order against Ashley proved more complicated than anticipated. The officers were sympathetic, but explained we needed more evidence, since she hadn't made explicit threats. They essentially advised us to document everything in return if she escalated. Incredibly frustrating, but at least we had it on record. Sarah's parents were utterly devastated by all of this. Nancy called Sarah almost daily, weeping and blaming herself for not recognizing the signs of Ashley's obsession. Dave stopped golfing and barely left the house. He had been very close with Ashley, always taking her fishing and teaching her about his tools, so this affected him particularly hard. I felt terrible for them, but our priority had to be protecting Mikey. Speaking of Mikey, that child is remarkably resilient. After our car conversation about donors and bio-dads, he seemed mostly fine. He asked a few follow-up questions over dinner that night. Do I have the Australia man's eyes? And can I still like dinosaurs if you don't? But then he moved on to discussing his friend Jacob's new puppy. Sarah and I exchanged glances of relief over his head. Children are incredible in that way. They can process monumental revelations and then immediately shift to what truly matters, like puppies. We decided to enroll Mikey in therapy too, just to ensure he had a safe space to process everything. Dr. Jennifer recommended her colleague, Dr. Richard, who specialized in children. Mikey actually enjoyed going because Dr. Richard had an enormous collection of Legos in his office. I wish I could say things instantly improved after that, but that's not how real life operates. About a week after we filed the restraining order, I received an unusual email from an unrecognized profile. The subject line simply read, Mikey's real father, and my heart sank. I almost deleted it without opening, thinking it was Ashley using a fake account, but curiosity got the better of me. It was from Robert. I don't know if this is appropriate, But Ashley contacted me last week with some very disturbing claims. I wanted to reach out directly rather than assume anything she said was true. If you're willing to talk, I'd appreciate clarifying this. I immediately showed Sarah. She went pale and sank heavily onto the couch. She actually contacted him? This is insane. Should I respond? I asked. Sarah nodded. We need to know what she told him. So I wrote back, keeping it concise. I informed him that Ashley was experiencing some mental health issues and had been making false claims about our family. I mentioned we had a restraining order pending against her, stretching the truth a bit, and inquired what exactly she had said. His response arrived the next morning. Apparently, Ashley had messaged him on Facebook, asserting that Sarah had secretly used him as a sperm donor without his knowledge, that I had just discovered this, and that Mikey wanted to meet his real dad. She had even sent him pictures of Mikey from her phone. I want to be clear, Robert wrote. I never donated sperm to Sarah or anyone else. I haven't seen Sarah since that random encounter in San Diego years ago. Ashley's story made no sense, but she seemed so convinced I thought I should check. I showed Sarah, and she immediately began composing a reply from my account. She explained the entire situation. Her fertility issues, using an anonymous donor, Ashley's obsession with me, and her attempts to disrupt our family. She apologized for involving him in our drama, and assured him he had absolutely no connection to Mikey. Robert responded with obvious relief. He was married with twins in Sydney and had zero interest in any paternity drama. He also mentioned that Ashley had been messaging him increasingly strange things over the past few days, and he had already blocked her. He wished us well, and that was that. One crisis averted. But Ashley wasn't finished yet. The next weekend we took Mikey to the park to give Sarah's parents a respite from their Ashley-induced stress. We were watching Mikey on the monkey bars when Sarah suddenly clutched my arm. She's here, she whispered. I looked around and spotted Ashley sitting on a bench about 50 feet away, simply observing us. Not approaching, not calling out, just staring. I'm contacting the authorities, I said, pulling out my phone. Wait, Sarah interjected. Let me try speaking to her first. Perhaps seeing her in person will help me comprehend what's happening. I disliked the idea, but I nodded. I'll stay with Mikey. First sign of trouble, I'm calling. Sarah walked over to Ashley, and I positioned myself between them and Mikey, keeping him entertained with promises of ice cream while still able to observe the sisters. I couldn't discern their words, but their body language conveyed the narrative. Sarah speaking calmly, hands open. Ashley defensive, then animated, then weeping. Sarah placed a hand on Ashley's shoulder, and Ashley did not recoil. After approximately 20 minutes, Sarah returned, looking drained but somewhat relieved. She's agreed to check herself into a treatment center, Sarah said quietly. She's been having episodes since her divorce, not taking her medication. The obsession with you apparently began back in college, but worsened significantly recently. Do you believe her? I asked skeptically. I don't know, but she showed me the intake paperwork for a mental health facility. She's going tomorrow. Mom and Dad are taking her. I simply nodded, still keeping an eye on Ashley, who remained on the bench looking at her phone. She also admitted she's been off her meds for bipolar disorder for months, Sarah continued. No one knew she'd been diagnosed 2 years ago, not even Mom and Dad. That explained some things, but I wasn't ready to forgive and forget. We still need boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries. Absolutely, Sarah agreed. But if she's getting help, maybe there's hope for some kind of relationship down the road for Mikey's sake. I wasn't convinced, but I nodded anyway. Family is complex. The next few months were actually quite peaceful. Ashley checked into the treatment facility as promised and remained for 6 weeks. Sarah's parents kept us informed of her progress. Apparently, she was responding well to therapy and new medication. The doctors had diagnosed her with bipolar I with some borderline personality traits, which explained the intensity of her fixation on me and her extreme methods. We maintained our distance, though. Sarah met with Ashley a few times, always in public places without me or Mikey. According to Sarah, Ashley seemed genuinely remorseful and more stable. She had confessed to everything. The fake letters manipulating Mikey, contacting Robert. She had even shown Sarah journals where she had documented her obsession with me for years, including detailed fantasies about us being together. Creepy as hell, but at least she was receiving help. Meanwhile, our family was also healing. I officially adopted Mikey, which involved a lot of paperwork and a brief court appearance where the judge mostly just smiled at Mikey and asked if he was happy to have me as his dad. Mikey's enthusiastic, he's the best dad ever, made my heart feel like it might burst. We also found a new therapist for all 3 of us, Dr. Casey, who specialized in family systems. She helped us figure out how to discuss Mikey's origin story in age-appropriate ways. We practiced using terms like donor and biological origins instead of real dad or not your real dad. We role-played conversations Mikey might have with friends or teachers about his family. The best advice Dr. Casey gave us was to make Mikey's story something special rather than shameful. He was wanted so much that you went to extraordinary lengths to bring him into your family, she told us. That's something to celebrate, not conceal. So we initiated a new family tradition. Origin Day, the anniversary of when we discovered Sarah was pregnant. We told Mikey it was the day we knew our family was beginning. We had cake and looked at baby pictures and recounted stories about how thrilled we were to meet him. It became his second favorite day after his birthday. About 6 months after the whole upheaval, Sarah's parents invited us all for Sunday dinner, including Ashley. They asked us first, of course, and we had a lengthy discussion about whether it was the opportune moment. Eventually, we decided to go, but with clear boundaries. No time alone with Mikey, no bringing up the past unless in a therapeutic context, and we would depart at the first sign of trouble. That dinner was strained but ultimately acceptable. Ashley appeared different. Calmer, less manic energy. She apologized to me privately, not offering excuses but acknowledging the pain she had inflicted. She gave Mikey a new dinosaur book but didn't attempt to hug him or get too close. She primarily conversed with her parents while Sarah and I kept Mikey occupied. Small steps. Things weren't perfect afterward, but they gradually improved. Ashley relocated to Sacramento for a fresh start and a new job, which honestly was a relief. The distance benefited everyone. She still returned home for major holidays, and each time became a little less awkward. Sarah maintained a cautious relationship with her, mostly through texts and occasional phone calls. I kept my distance but remained civil. As for Sarah and me, rebuilding trust requires time. We still had moments where the past would intrude. I'd see her texting and wonder what secret she might be concealing, or she'd notice me looking at Mikey pensively and worry I was questioning my role in his life. But those moments became less frequent. We discovered ways to fortify our relationship outside of the crisis. We began weekly date nights, something we had abandoned when Mikey was born. We took an actual vacation, just the two of us, while Mikey stayed with Sarah's parents. We even enrolled in a cooking class together, though we both struggled and ended up ordering pizza most nights anyway. Dr. Jennifer helped us identify the underlying issues in our relationship. Sarah's fear of abandonment that led her to conceal things, my tendency to idealize our life instead of confronting problems directly. We weren't flawless, but we were working on it. The adoption papers were officially processed on Mikey's 8th birthday. We hadn't planned it that way, just a coincidence of court scheduling, but it felt right. We didn't make a grand announcement in front of his friends at his dinosaur-themed party, but that night, after everyone left, we gave him a special gift. A storybook I had created about a boy who was so loved that his parents found a magical way to bring him into their family. That's like me, right? Mikey asked, looking up from the hand-drawn pages. I was so wanted, you got a donor. Exactly like you. I told him, my throat tight with emotion. You were worth everything. He hugged me then, sticky with cake and overly tired from his party. I'm glad you're my dad, he whispered. The bio dad just made me, but you do all the real dad stuff. I held him a little tighter, meeting Sarah's eyes over his head. She was crying silently but smiling too. That night, after Mikey was asleep, Sarah and I sat on our back porch with glasses of wine. The stars were visible, and our neighborhood was quiet except for the faint sound of someone's wind chimes. We made it, Sarah said softly, leaning against my shoulder. I wasn't sure we would. Me neither, I admitted. But I'm glad we did. And I meant it. Our family wasn't what I had envisioned when we were dating in college. It was messier, more intricate, built on some difficult truths and painful growth. But it was genuine and it was ours. And at the end of the day, that's what family is. Not the perfect story you imagine, but the imperfect one you strive for.